All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, in 2019, the Washington Nationals won their first World Series championship in franchise history, which erased so many years of heartache that dated back to the franchise's days as the Montreal Expos. But we'll never know what could have been afterwards for those Nationals because right after winning the World Series, that team was gutted by trades and free agency. Dating back to their days as the Expos, the Nationals franchise has been known to produce quality major league talent. And for me, recently at least, the ultimate slap in the face for Nationals fans right now is for them to have to sit back and see some of that former homegrown talent get busy in the National League East at their expense. Now, Bryce Harper left DC in 2018, just before Washington won that World Series. He signed that massive deal with the Philadelphia Phillies. But then in 2022, both infielder Trey Turner and outfielder Juan Soto were traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers and San Diego Padres, respectively. Before we saw Turner return a couple of years later to the NL East in free agency via the Philadelphia Phillies. And of course, in the case of Juan Soto, the Nationals did try to make it happen. I mean, they made him a substantial offer, 13 years at I think close to $440 million. And of course, Soto and super agent Scott Boras turned it down. So that subsequently led to him getting traded to San Diego. He was then traded to the New York Yankees for a year, balled out, and then of course he's back in the NL East as the highest paid player in MLB history, courtesy of the New York Mets. And the man at the controls of all of these moves, as well as the other moves, okay, was general manager Mike Rizzo, who, since his team won it all in 2019, he has been attempting to rebuild the Nationals, but to no avail. And after 17 years as the general manager of the Nationals, Rizzo, along with manager Dave Martinez, received their walking papers today. So you look at it, and through 90 games this season, the Nationals, they're 37 and they're 53. They're currently in last place in the NL East. They're 16 games back of the first place Phillies, and they're also looking at finishing in the basement of this division for the fifth time in the last 6 years. And since the Nats won that World Series back in 2019, they've not finished higher than fourth in the East. So this was a surprise today for me as well as other people. Okay, some people will feel it's deserved, and I'm not here to question that. But nonetheless, I'll say this: was this the right decision as it was made now by team owner Mark Lerner? Well, you look at it like this: what just happened this past weekend, left a bad taste in the mouth of a lot of people that follow this team. We just saw the Nationals get swept at home by the Boston Red Sox, a Boston Red Sox team who in themselves have had their fair share of ups and downs this year. Okay. But nonetheless, Washington was just swept at home by Boston. And in that series, they were outscored 27-9. We've seen a lot of ups and downs from the Washington Nationals this year. Unfortunately, for their sake, it's been more downs than ups. Of course, the highlight, if you will, of that came last month when the Nats lost 11 straight games in a row. And of course, the lowest of low points for Washington during that stretch, they were swept at home by the Colorado Rockies. And to give you an idea of how bad that is, you're talking about a Colorado team that is flirting, and they're more than likely going to break the MLB record for losses in the modern era, which was just set last year by the Chicago White Sox. Okay, we're talking about the Colorado Rockies. They just picked up their 21st win of the season today. Okay, so that just gives you an idea of how bad that they are. And three of those 21 wins, of course, came courtesy of the Nats. But nonetheless, you look at it, there's some talent on this Nationals team. It hasn't come together for everybody. It sounds like maybe there was a disconnect between the young talent and Dave Martinez. And of course, at the end of the day, you can't fire the players. So, of course, Martinez is gone. And at this point, I think Mike Rizzo is attached at the hip with Martinez. And honestly, you look at it and say, hey, Mike Rizzo has been at the controls of this rebuild. All right. And it's one of those where I think you could understand, and I think you could accept if you're the Nationals to say, hey, you know what, we're starting over after this World Series championship, but they have not shown a lot of progress to the point that, they're consistently finishing in last place of this division. You look at the Marlins, okay? The Marlins just last year lost 100 games, and already the Marlins, they're 40 and 48. I'm not saying it's great, but it's still a step in the right direction. Now, all of this is not going to be on Mike Rizzo. All of this is not going to be on Dave Martinez. Some of this definitely falls into the lap of ownership, but team owners are not going to fire themselves. I mean, you look at the Nationals, bigger market, but they have one of the lowest payrolls in Major League Baseball. Matter of fact, coming into the season, only the Athletics, the Marlins, and the White Sox had lower payrolls than the Nats. You look at the pitching. Washington's pitching has been terrible this season. Okay, they have they're only one of three teams, along with the A's and the Rockies, who have a team ERA above 5. Like I've said before, the talent is there, but talent alone is not going to get you wins. And I'm not saying that the talent is there to the standpoint that the Nationals should be competing with the Mets, should be competing with the Phillies atop this division. But nonetheless, they should be better than what they're at. And you figure the Marlins have shown some improvement, some signs of life. And for what is all said and done, as many injuries as the Braves have been dealing with this season, and they've been dealing with a lot of them. They're 39 and 50 at the moment. The Nationals still have not been able to overtake them. Okay, so I think all of that said, and I think the cherry on top was the sweep this weekend at the hands of the Boston Red Sox. So I think, now this organization is going to pivot. Clearly, they're going to go in a new direction as far as who's going to lead their front office. They're going to go in a new direction as far as who's going to run their team on a day-to-day basis. So I think it puts everybody on notice on this 25-man roster, because guess what? There's a possibility of somebody coming in to run the front office for the Nats that is not attached at the hip with anybody involved on this team. So that's the biggest thing right there. I think Mark Lerner wanted to have a shakeup, if you will, to try to get something out of this team. And I think the rest of this season, all 72 games for the Nationals, is going to be an evaluation process going forward. But at the end of the day, I really do think the Washington Nationals have to figure out what direction that they're going in. They have to find themselves some semblance of order. They had that for quite some time. I mean, you think about it, and of course, with Mike Rizzo leading the front office, the Nationals were a contender for basically the entire decade of the 2010s after being down on their luck, you know, during their final days in Montreal and carrying over to DC, having consecutive first round picks, number one overall picks, excuse me, using it on the likes of Steven Strasburg and Bryce Harper and several others, and it finally coming together. And then, of course, that was culminated by the championship in 2019. But since then, the Nationals have simply been a rudderless ship. And I think it shows up, and it has shown up in the amount of games that this team has lost and the amount of games that this team continues to lose. Okay, so I think that's got to be first things first. You have to have a plan of attack. You have to ask yourself, what do we want this team to be? Where is the identity for this team? And right now, they don't have any. So put me in the category of being shocked, as far as what happened today. But at the end of the day, I do feel that the Nationals organization believed that they needed themselves a new voice, or in this case, a couple of new voices to lead this team going forward. Mike Rizzo, I think he won't be out of work for long. I think somebody's going to pick him up. I think he's a solid baseball mind. Might not be in the same capacity that he was in Washington, but I think somebody's going to bring him into their front office. And I think the same thing goes for Dave Martinez. Dave Martinez is a baseball lifer. Played for the Nationals going back to their days as the Expos, of course, was an assistant coach and a bench coach for years with the Tampa Bay Rays before he got the job in Washington. I think he'll be back in somebody's major league organization sooner rather than later. But nonetheless, the Nationals felt that they had to go in a different direction for Mike Rizzo and Dave Martinez. Thus, the moves were made today. So let's see if the Nats can find a way to get things turned around in DC and start playing some competitive baseball once again. But folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for checking out the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. And as always, if you like what you heard and saw, you know what to do. Please feel free to hit that like button as well as subscribing to this channel. And like I always say, it's greatly appreciated. Also, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you give me that follow, it'd be my pleasure to follow you right back. The same goes for Instagram, where you could check me out at 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge. And also, if you're on Facebook, you could check us out at the Sports Depot 365. As far as I'm concerned, one of the better sports debating groups going on social media. But until next time, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off, and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.